Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of In Lay Terms. I'm your host, Payman Asghari, and today we have a panel of three individuals who've had the misfortune of going through the court system. So first, it's Mr. Trevor Holsworth. Welcome back, Trevor.
Oh, thanks, Payman. Nice to be here.
Anytime. Michael, Mr. Michael Jackson, welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
And finally, we have Kirk Riese. How you doing, Kirk? Come on,
Hey,
Kirk.
Come on,
Good,
speak up.
It's okay. We got a bit of an audio delay from Kirk, but that's okay.
Okay.
So to get things started, Trevor, I thought you could give us just a brief recap of what happened to you in the court system.
Sure. We all need the legal system, and I was in a divorce back in 2005, and witnessed trial fixing and corruption by lawyers, and I reported it and tried to resolve it, and just witnessed a failure of the systems to properly check corruption. And it happens more often. And so I went through all the proper procedures and reported the lawyers to the judge monitoring the case. And the judge protected the lawyer committing fraud on a court order to protect the lawyer improperly. I reported the lawyer to the BC Law Society, and they initially saw a problem, and then it all of a sudden got washed up and hurriedly pushed aside, and nothing was resolved. And the BC Law Society said there was no problem. And then I asked for written reasons, as they are required to provide by statute, and they refused to do that. And so that kind of killed that. And I made a complaint about the judge protecting a lawyer committing fraud, because I presented the transcript to the judge to conclusively establish what was proper. And the judge just called the plaintiff up to the stand and asked her what she had heard a judge said, and preferred that to the transcript. And the Judicial Council of Canada approved of that conduct. So they approved of fraud in our legal system. So part of what Canadians have to accept, apparently, is corruption, which is completely contrary to the Canadian Charter, where we're guaranteed fair and impartial trials. So I kind of sat on that for a while. It kind of destroyed me for a while. I was pretty bad PTSD and pretty devastated, because basically you can't guarantee anything. You can't prove anything if you can't rely on the best evidence possible to determine truth. But anyhow, I ended up having 2 kids and a new relationship and restarted life and whatnot. But at some point in time, I was in a pretty high risk industry. And I was like, well, if I ever get sued, I don't want to bring up this problem. It didn't seem fair to bring it up with an actual live dispute in hand. So I decided that I'd bring it up to the court system independently and confront the issue. And then the court system just went head over heels trying to ignore it and deny it and all the rest. I had the Minister of Justice make false and misleading statements as to his duties in order to avoid doing them. And just everyone internally protecting each other, and the only people that are not being protected are the public. And that, so I ended up taking this Minister of Justice problem to because I took the court system. I went to the courts. The Minister of Justice made false and misleading statements, and I asked for a writ of mandamus, an order for the court for the minister to do his duty, which is to protect the public and ensure that the administration is in compliance with the law. And it wasn't. And so then that decision was due on February 14th, 2022, the day that David Lametti enforced the Emergencies Act on Canadians. And so I presented the evidence to the Federal Court of Appeal as they're debating the Emergencies Act legality, and they hurriedly shuffled it away. They didn't want to see it. And so I presented the problem to Parliament, and it's sort of sitting in parliamentary committees. And since Parliament's in such a shambles right now, it's kind of dying a slow death with corruption in Parliament becoming a major issue. And that's where I'm sitting with the whole legal system politics problem. Accountability was asked of the Minister of Justice, and instead of addressing the problem, he enforced martial law on Canadians, which is a horrendous decision to make. But that's where we are. Not sure. That's all I was going to say there. Payman, are you still around? Or I'd have to chat a bit further. Does anyone hear me? I can't hear anyone.
I can hear you, but Payman has disappeared for some reason.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, maybe you can take over, Michael, and we can hear your story, because I listened to your interview with Payman, and it was jaw dropping, and I really appreciated you speaking out, and you had some great words of wisdom. I look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you, Trevor. Yeah, you have an interesting story. It's really coincidental, I guess you could say, how these cases keep popping up in the same exact evidence, the exact same story from every person, where the courts literally legitimize fraud in court, like lying lawyers and lying witnesses, even when you have the proof to back it up, because they never do. They just, there he is.
Welcome back.
Keep going. Sorry.
Yeah.
We moved on to Michael.
Yeah. So it's
Okay.
interesting how, at every turn of the road, when you provide documents as to the fraud going on in court or the lies, even yourself, it wasn't, you had the proof to show that they were lying, they were committing, perjury. Same in my case. And the other side doesn't. They just have their vocal testimony, their verbal testimony. And they never can back up anything they say. So basically, the courts are run on lies, right? There's no truth. And when the truth is entered as evidence, it's ignored completely. And it's been the same in my case. I fought in family courts in Saskatchewan for, 5 years before I went on the run with my daughter. And for those 5 years, every single court hearing I went to was a lawyer just sowing dirty lies. Never a single piece of paper or, an example to back anything up, where I would provide texts, I would provide documents to prove my story, and they would resist you entering them in as evidence. But you can fight it, but the judge just ignores it. And when they make their orders or their rulings, they don't mention your documented proof. When they write their judge's orders, they write what the other person said, not what you said. Or sometimes they'll put in the order what you said, but they'll never refer to, the plaintiff or the respondent, had this, and this. No, they'll just kind of rely on what the one who cries best or the one who lies best. They'll just rely on their evidence. So, my situation is I fought all those years. Then my ex wanted to vaccinate my daughter without my permission. And I went through the courts. I went through regular King's Bench. And then I went up to the Appeal Court of Saskatchewan, and it was nothing happened, zero. They just tried to basically shut me down and allow it to happen, and said it was in her best interest. So then I went on the run, and after going on the run, as people are starting to learn, I was arrested and then taken away from my daughter. I was put in a supermax jail for a year, denied bail on 2 occasions. The second one was a totally made up Hollywood movie. Then, just fighting through the court system at pre-trials for my actual criminal trial was the same thing. The judge just basically rewrote the law all the way through the voir dire hearings for expert witnesses, just basically tailored it to what her judgment was going to be. And then at the end, after the jury saw the truth, she just changed up the whole situation and said, I'm charged under Section 282 of the Criminal Code, which has a defense 5A or 5.1, which says a parent can't be found guilty of this offense if they believe their child would suffer harm. And she literally turned to the jury and said, that doesn't apply to me, and was found guilty. And now they want me to go back to jail. So it's literally judges tailoring the proceedings to what their judgment is going to be, because it's already determined at the beginning of your hearing. And in family court, like you say, Trevor, and like, I don't know Kirk's story if he's been in family court fighting or not, but in family court, the judges just they have their opinion made already. Their objective is to tear apart the family, remove the protector, the father. So they know that going in, your chances are extremely limited unless your wife shows up with her pimp or something, and then maybe you have a chance. But otherwise, as a father, it's predestined what's going to happen.
I'm going to let Trevor, if you want to respond to that. You guys
I have been to court, family court.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's a good summary. Yeah, I think so I end up studying the legal system.
This delay is really.
And this is, and I totally hear and agree with basically what the legal system has turned into is a racket where they can extort men for access to their children, force the men to hire lawyers and try to get their kids back, and then also fight child support. And then the system is corrupt. You have to open up your entire books to the lawyers so they know exactly your finances, and they can take you to the cleaners or do whatever they want to, and you're totally at their mercy. And then if you have no checks and balances on their conduct, then you got open corruption just asking to happen. And it definitely goes right to the judge's conduct. Took my case all the way to the BC Court of Appeal, and this is what the judge said. He actually believes he was unfairly treated. The fact that his evidence was not accepted leads to the existence of a vast failure of judges and lawyers to comply with their oaths of office, seems to indicate a disturbing worldview rife with conspiracies and corruption. This does not reflect reality. The one word that she didn't put in her statement was that my evidence was the transcript. And if you were to put that in, it would prove the entire narrative and prove the reality of the situation. But the judge took that evidence, the fact that his evidence was the transcript, and she removes the transcript. So we get gaslighting from the judges and the lawyers all the way along the line to control the narrative. And that's the problem that you come up against as well, Michael, where the judge makes the decision beforehand and then writes the decision to meet what she wants to accomplish, or he.
Yes.
But anyhow.
I thought from Kirk, just in the interest of fairness, Kirk, if you could tell us a little about your story.
Okay. Well, I did go to family court for 4 years. Pretty much bankrupted me. And again, the judge.
Kirk, you're having some audio problems. We lost about half of everything you said. Maybe if you can try to fix that. I don't know. I guess we could go to Michael if you wanted to add anything. Seems like you and Trevor are on the same page.
Yeah.
You're muted, Mike.
No.
They even
Yeah.
seem to
Can't get video
the
or any
judges
sounds. So, carry on.
they even seem to handpick the judges for the cases. And for instance, and I would imagine when you're dealing with a legal aid lawyer, like appointed by legal aid, or a court appointed lawyer, I believe they're handpicked as well for, boy, you really hate to say that it's an intentional dereliction of duty, but I'm at the point now where I believe that is the case. They'll pick a lawyer who will willingly become derelict in his duty to you. I've witnessed many lawyers in my life in family court, and they all seem to have the opinion, and I don't know if Trevor and Kirk had the same outcome, where the lawyer says, this is the way I'm going to do it, and I don't care what you have to say about it. And I think when you hear that from a lawyer, that should be the number one sign that you need to fire him and find a new one. Because if they're not going to tailor your arguments and your case to your situation and take your input in the situation and how you think, you should go forward, because let's admit that not all lawyers are geniuses, and some of us are. And I'm not saying that I am, but there's a lot of fathers out there and a lot of individuals, Payman, yourself and Kirk, who've been through this. A lot of us, because of our experience in life and just our intelligence and being objective instead of subjective, like living in their realm, we see things differently, right? And for me, having lawyers all the time handpick, like the lawyer for me for when I was in jail, Alex Deacon, it was court appointed. So, and it was from a private firm. So I assumed that I had a really good shot. My ex had a legal aid lawyer, and generally they are on a lower level when it comes to arguments and their ability to, sway the court. But my lawyer just gave it up. Both appointed by private firms, Willows, Walsh, Orrin, Brundage, and Regina was Alex Deacon, and Rock DuPont had his own firm. And both of them just sold me out in an instant. The first one played me for 3 months, gave up my custody in a phone call without even asking my permission. And the second one, come to the contempt hearing, basically stood up and said one sentence and sat back down after 3 months of preparation. In fact, the judge even scolded him. So if, telling me that, that they weren't plants, I would never believe it. I would have to literally be a fly on the wall in every conversation to believe otherwise. So I think the court, not only are they picking the judges, they're picking the lawyers. There's someone up there, and I would imagine it's the Chief Justice of each province, who's been, I'm sure he would be, how would you say, directed in what and how they want the law to progress and what cases they want to win and what cases they want to lose. I would imagine it's up to the Chief Justice, and maybe they have their own star chamber as well, a group of senior judges who make these decisions. But it's so obvious to me. I mean, even the judge they picked for my contempt hearing while I was in jail on the vaccine issue, they picked Justice Michael McGaugh. Now, he was the original judge in Saskatchewan who tried to make it, he did rule in favor of the vaccine. It was a mother fighting a father who didn't want her child vaccinated. Justice McGaugh did not allow an expert witness, a doctor from British Columbia, to testify, but he allowed a doctor from Regina who was pro-vaccine to testify. And then his ruling at the end was it's safe and it's in the child's best interest. Well, if you don't have both sides arguing it, if the judge is tailoring the whole hearing or the trial to a specific point, it's pointless. Like if they're not going to listen to the other side or give credence to it, you're never going to get anywhere in court. But these judges, I believe they're totally handpicked. The lawyers are handpicked in these cases that matter, right? So
let's Trevor, let's see if you want to respond to that, and then we'll see if we can get Kirk back. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, I think the lawyers all are under kind of a false duty in a way to just kind of make sure that everything seems to be up on the up and up, but they're just circling the wagons, and that kind of thing. And for sure, there's manipulation that goes on with judicial assignments and lawyer assignments. But I want to hear from Kirk and see if, Kirk's kind of disappeared for a moment here.
Yeah, he's good.
No. Yeah, I don't know what, I'm kind of at I presented the whole issue of corruption to Parliament about
Go ahead, sorry.
a month and a half ago, and sort of presented a case for why the Minister of Justice should be held responsible, and it should go to the Prime Minister, and that's all in front of Parliament now. But there's so much corruption in Parliament that when I originally went down this path, I had a lot of trust in Canada, and I was like, well, if this story gets out of mine, it's going to be devastating. And I thought it would be a bit of an issue.
Still there?
I'm still here.
Could 4 people in 4 different cities be having network issues?
Yeah, I'm fine. I can hear everything perfect.
Anyway, well, let's move off to Kirk and see if we get better reception from Kirk now. We got you, Kirk?
Strange as how then I had internet and Trevor. It seems like there's no internet. You guys hear me?
Kirk's microphone isn't on either.
Yeah,
we can hear you perfect.
We're in and out here, so I'm just listening.
All right, carry on, guys. Sorry.
Okay, well,
Keep
maybe
going.
that's the best way to go ahead.
So maybe it'll pick.
But now we got this problem with the legal system, and we got the problem in the political system where Canadians aren't being able to trust our political system, and we have also got a problem with we can't trust our legal system, and these are important institutions that really go to the heart of democracy, and that's the problem that we're facing, which is a pretty significant problem. And so we're looking for solutions to that. And I'm kind of scratching my head here, and maybe someone else has got something to add onto that.
So Trevor, I'm curious, when you say you presented your case to Parliament there, could you go into detail on what you did and how you did that?
Sure. I mean, I went into this knowing that Parliament was the correct body to check the judiciary. That's what the doctrine of separation of powers is that you have three bodies in government. You've got the executive, you've got the legislature, and you've got the judiciary, and they each have a role to play in checking their powers. The judiciary checks that the laws that legislature produces are constitutional, and they can strike them down if they're not. And they can also do the same thing with executive conduct. What's being forgotten in our accountability role is that Parliament has the role to check the power of the judiciary as well, because Parliament is the ultimate representative of the people, and they are the penultimate protectors of the public interest. And so I knew that Parliament was the body to properly check the judiciary. And I had threatened to use the enforcement procedure of the Charter, which is that anyone can apply to a court of competent jurisdiction. This is section 24 of the Charter, to protect your rights. And Parliament is the correct body to check the powers of the judiciary. So initially I threatened that I would be serving them using that enforcement procedure. But as soon as the NDP, announced that they were not supporting the confidence agreement that they had with the Liberal Party, I wrote a letter to every single member of Parliament rather than serving it through a sort of a gentler approach and allow parliamentarians to try to fix things a little bit. So I just wrote a letter and I laid out my case and presented the argument and see what I did get. One response back from a Liberal MP, but nobody else responded. And we had a few conversations, went back and forth, but nothing really came of it. And then Jagmeet kind of went back on his word and started supporting the Liberal Party. But now we've got the Bloc Québécois saying that they will bring down the government. And some of these things are, I believe, a consequence of some of the communication that I've had. What I found is that, even though we don't get results that we want, they do have effect. So it's important that we continue to ask questions and demand accountability, because it does have an impact. We may not see it, and it may take a year or two or more for these things to work themselves through the system. But I think it's important that we still ask for the accountability measures, and we request that the rule of law and our democratic principles are respected. Because if we don't, we are accepting it, as you know. So that's what I did, and I think at some point in time I will make a formal request that they produce accountability. But I'm kind of waiting for the court action at the Federal Court of Appeal to come through, and I'm waiting to see if anything resolves from sort of the informal communications. And it's also presented to the Parliamentary Committee on the Declaration of the Emergencies. So they have that as far as their evidence. And so then we, at some point in time, we have to also allow our institutions to function, and we have to give them a chance to function the way that they're supposed to.
Payman?
Do you want to say something, Michael? Go ahead.
Yeah. I appreciate and respect the fact of your point of view, actually, Trevor. And, so I look at what you did in the response, and I take that for myself as a confirmation that, I'm kind of different than you. My approach is much different. I don't believe that working in the system, that it's going to work anymore. I know what you say, how, it can take time, 2, 3, 4, 5 years to affect change through Parliament. But I think that in our country, I think we're past that. I think that in previous years, that was the approach. And I think there are people and there's stories out there that actually were successful with that route. But I can't picture anybody being successful that way anymore. The fact that only 1 out of 338 got back to you, and it was more just, a handshake sort of thing, to me shows the truth of the situation and the severity. I think in Canada, the judicial system and the political system is so far separated from the people that there's no coming back. I'm of the opinion, you hear people say, burn it down and rebuild it. I'm of that opinion. I'm not into violence, and I'm not into burning buildings, but I'm into tearing the whole system back to the foundation and trying to rebuild it. I think that the political system has become so corrupt. The judicial system has become so corrupt. The school system has become so corrupt that you can't fix it, because the people that are in it, the ones who are, voted in, they all have the same attitude. I mean, there may be the odd one who likes to, give hints in press conferences or whatever that I'm different, but they just get shut up. Since Harper came in, where he started that totalitarian thing as a leader in a party where, from what I saw, that was the first time in Canadian history when you saw a leader really direct his caucus and his party members, forcing them to literally vote to what he wanted. Now, I understand the benefits of that. Like if you bring in a political party with an ideal, and really the only way to get that ideal forward is to control your caucus and make sure everybody's on the same page. That helps to move things along and get things done. But at the same point, when you have people who are voted in who are told to follow the company line or you're out, which we've seen since Harper, it's a regular thing now, where people get kicked out of a ministerial position. They get kicked out of the party completely for not, following what the party says, even though they've been voted in by their constituents. So, I would love to have the hope you have, Trevor. I really would, because I believe that's the way our system is designed. But I believe our system is so flawed and so corrupt that it can't be fixed. When they talk about drain the swamp, like they do in the States, to me, that's an impossibility. I mean, we're going to see in a couple of days what happens in the States in that similar situation. But I think you're taking chaos and bringing in a different kind of chaos. And, man, it's not that I'm hopeless. Like I see you have hope, of changing things. It's not that I'm hopeless. I consider myself more of a realist. And I look at the picture on a whole, and I just think, yeah, we've been brought up to be raised to think this way, but it's got us into a lot of trouble. And we're at a point now where if we don't do something about the current situation, something drastic, and, Payman, I realize your position, and maybe the drastic thing is to bring in a new party who thinks different, acts different, responds different, all those things. But again, the time it takes to affect that, we're going to be done. We're looking down the barrel of a gun right now. With the bills that are being proposed in this country, what we're doing right now will not be allowed. So when that's not allowed, how are you going to affect change? By writing a letter? By, showing up at Parliament and protesting? You'll be arrested. Maybe the letter you can get away with, but our rights in this country, our voice is about to be completely squashed forever. And if we don't stand up now and do something about it, I believe as a country, it's over.
I just wanted to jump in and say one thing that I'm trying to do right now, like I'm running federally, but I'm trying to go locally and build a slate of candidates in the next, I think it's in 2 years that we have another municipal election. So I want to do a series of town halls at the city level, the municipal level, and say, these are the problems that we're facing, and really root it on finances. Like, this is how much they're spending money. This is how much they're increasing the cost of living through stupid things like mandatory surveys. And these are the hidden ways that they can steal money from you, like property tax. And if we can replicate that at every single municipality, maybe we could affect change from the ground level, and then move that up to the provincial level too, and try to get independence in. It's a little bit long term, but if something like that works, like, what recommendation would you guys have? Trevor, maybe start with you. Like, what's one simple way to reform the judicial system, like an independent oversight committee?
Yeah, I've given it a bunch of thought, and I appreciate your words, Michael, and I definitely feel that way from time to time. But I sort of think about it and I go, well, what's the risk of creating something worse? And how can what we need is accountability, and what we want is transparency and those kind of things. And if we tear it down completely, then we run the risk of, say, every time the change of government occurs, then we say dismiss all the judges from the previous administration, and that kind of conduct is a spiral downwards in a way as well. What I did do is I was following the Judges Act as they went through Parliament. Is it maybe back in 2021? I think now it's been a while. But I put in recommendations for what I thought would be accountability measures. And, I think what we've moved away from over the last 20, 30 years in Canada is from being a rule of law state, and all those institutions, the police and the lawyers and the judges and the politicians have all taken their power to consolidate their power, and the Prime Minister's office, and consolidated power, made themselves invulnerable. Backbenchers have a huge problem. We think that we have a poor voice. Backbenchers in these parties also feel completely.
Are we just having national internet issues in Canada?
We're back. Yeah,
Trevor.
I don't know, but I tried to. So what I proposed was, and this is the way that the Constitution is sort of written, and I said that the judiciary should be checked by a jury of Canadians rather than themselves, which is the current system, is that they judge their own conduct and they protect those that they want to protect, and they dismiss who they want to get rid of, which means that they can remove the people that they don't want and keep the people that they do want, even if it's obstructing justice or creating corruption. But anyhow, what I suggested was a citizen, and the same sort of system, a jury of citizens could be in a number of different areas, like the police, conduct boards, maybe the RCM, the Parliamentary Ethics Commissioner. Instead of having more bureaucracy, we could have a jury system, and that's the way that the Constitution is written, is that the people should be in charge and should uncheck the other powers. And so I put that through. But of course, the powers that be don't want that to happen. They want to keep the power to themselves and not be checked by the people, because they want to check themselves, because then they can protect themselves. And that's basic human nature. We all want no accountability and complete power. And the problem of democracy is that we are there to resist that tendency of power to become absolute, which is kind of what we have in Canada now, is we have absolute unchecked power. And the people, are starting to realize that 5 years ago, we weren't at that place where people were so distrustful of the government. And this last 5 years, with an attempt by the Liberal Party to take dictatorial powers, and all the corruption that's gone along with it, with the Chinese involvement in Canadian politics, and where we're seeing massive corruption that is absolutely unheard of in Canadian history.
Maybe Michael, let's go to you, and then we'll check in with Kirk.
Sure. So, you are aware, I think you said, Trevor, that you wrote, you put in a complaint about the judge. So I don't know if you did that provincially or if you did that federally. It went to the Judicial Watch, like the Oversight Committee. But, I was speaking to a lawyer a couple of weeks ago, he works for Pro Bono somewhere in Alberta. I won't mention where, but, he contacted me out of the goodness of his heart, which shows that they're out there. They may be hiding, but they're out there. And he sent me documents from my court case that the amicus curiae appointed by the court, who is supposed to be on my, he's loyal to the court, but he's supposed to be helping me at trial, told me for 3 months he was going to get a hold of, and he didn't. And I had some lawyer from Alberta get them from the Saskatoon courthouse and send them to me a couple days before my sentencing hearing. So that really says a lot. But anyways, with respect to your complaint about a judge, this same individual told me that in the past year or two, that governing body of judges in Canada has gone from a handful of complaints every year of judges to investigate to now, I believe he said on the books, is 143. There's actually, and don't quote me on the exact number, but let's just say it as a reference, that right now there's 143 complaints that are serious enough to make it there, that judges in Canada are being investigated by. And as far as he told me, there's no extra funding for that group. They're not hiring extra lawyers or judges to investigate these claims. It's the same small group of people doing the work. And so now, instead of you hearing back in, 4 or 5 months about a judge you could have put a complaint in about, it would take 2 or 3 years. And that just goes to show you how bad it is. I mean, you would think, if everything was truth in this country and everything was about the people, that this governing body would contact the federal government and say, listen, we're inundated with complaints. We need more funding. We need more staff. We have to deal with this issue. But of course it's not, because the government doesn't care. And again, when I talk about bringing it all down to the bottom and starting again, I believe in voting of judges. But the only problem, I guess, with that too is the fact of you have to vet people. Even when you talk about putting a citizen jury in control or in an overwatch position of judges and their conduct, look at the police the police complaints organizations. I know the one for the RCMP, supposedly when you go up a few levels, it's made up of citizens. But who are those citizens? A doctor, an ex-lawyer, an ex-judge. They're all friends of friends. They're all professionals. They all belong to the same country club, and they're overseeing the police. And it would be the same with judges. So, when we get into politics, there's that thing where you have, it's not a by-election payment. Maybe you could remind me what it's called when you have like a snap vote in a community on a certain issue, where everybody gets to vote on it when they can add it to an election. What's that called?
Like a referendum.
Yeah, sort of thing. So, if you have at least for that district, I guess, of where that judge is ruling, to maybe have some sort of a vote or something like that, some sort of a hearing, right? A public hearing. So the information is out there, so everybody sees both sides of the story, and allow the public to vote. And, maybe the public wouldn't get involved, but maybe they would, because they could see they actually have an opportunity to make change, that their voice is actually being heard. I think there's a danger in these citizen committees that oversee things, because they're handpicked and they're not vetted. And they're usually people who, 100%, toe the company line. They believe in the vaccine and being forced to save everybody what's in the best interest. You need a variety of people. You need a conspiracy theorist. You need a guy who's been arrested and thrown in jail. You need someone who runs a daycare. You need a swath of people to make the decision, not just a certain group, right? You need open-mindedness, you need transparency, and you need honesty. And I don't know how it's going to get there or what's going to happen, but I just know that we're out of time and we better figure this out really fast.
Kirk, if you're here still with us, maybe we could do by audio. Like, do you have any suggestions on how to reform the court system? Are you here? There he is.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm with these guys. Like, the judges never look at any of the evidence. They must feel threatened by having to report it. So I can't get a lawyer. Never mind a good one. I can't get a politician, mainstream media, nobody to pay attention, right? So I'm not sure what the judges are either cowardly or corrupt, or they can say they don't know. But I'm not sure. Like, that's why all of our stories have to get out so that they can be known. Like, share this information out with Michael and Trevor, and Payman's doing a great job. You just got to share the information. That's the only way. It's public opinion. You got to be able to have your neighbor understand what's going on, because a lot of neighbors don't. They're refusing to look at anything. So, there's a lot of worst case scenarios, and we're at that worst case scenario, big time. So, yeah, sorry about the audio problems, but I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or not.
No, thank you very much, Kirk. Your audio is coming a lot better now. I just wanted to say to Michael, voting is better, but I don't know if it's a sufficient tactic. Look at what's happening with politics, right? You were voting these people in, but they're not changing the problem. I think, for me, reducing the size of government is a big part of it. So I'd like to see like sheriffs that you could vote on, but I also like to see the power decentralized to the communities, and diminished. So return some of the power to the families. I don't know, Trevor, do you want to pick up on that?
Sure. Yeah. There's a great book by a guy named Dave Meslin, written here in Canada, and I can't remember what it's called now, but it's about democracy, and he's got a great bunch of reform ideas, from proportional voting to accountability measures, and I think that's the solution to the problem. Voting is one democratic reform. Basically, one of the sort of statements he came up with is the problem. If you have problems with democracy, increase democracy. So well, that is very peculiar, isn't it?
I was the only one for a minute.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So basically, increased democracy measures. On the deal with the Canadian Judicial Council, the number of complaints is over 1,000 now. And the government is so what they promised with this new legislation was that there would be a member of the public on the board. This was their accountability measure. The member of the public turned out to be a selected, one. They could have as many as they wanted, but it was one. And that member of the public was a so-called judge in a government tribunal. So not really a member of the public at all, another judge who would be protecting judges the same as the other judges. So, when they passed legislation, the Minister of Justice even admitted that it was the judges that wrote the Judges Act. They did what the judges asked them to do, didn't take any consideration of what the public wanted as well. It's just entrenching power, and that's all it is. And if we allow them to entrench power, they will continue to do so. The only method is to resist and call out and make the public aware of what the conduct that they are doing. And that's why we're getting these problems, is because the public has not checked those powers. We haven't asked for that accountability because 10 years ago, I think we all felt that, things were pretty good. And with the current administration, that sort of culture is being completely corrupted, and the culture of personal gain over public funds as being the acceptable code of conduct, where you just have people stealing from the public purse, and that's got to change. And we got to have democratic reform through the legislature in order to do that. And that's why I started pushing, and I think that's why I started pushing Parliament, because that is the answer. Nobody wants a corrupt legal system. It doesn't work for anybody except for the lawyers and judges. They get paid, but the public doesn't want a corrupted legal system, and we don't want a corrupted political system. So we got to push back hard. I agree with you on that, Michael, is that this is the time to push hard for accountability, for sure.
Michael, I'm going to throw that back to you, but Sue Kellen Dyer, or you say you have a question. If you write it down, I'll ask them. Go ahead, Michael.
So, when it comes to the judicial councils, you're saying now it's over 1,000. I mean, that just blows my mind because, I just heard 123 from this guy, but maybe he said 1,023. Maybe I misinterpreted it. But, when you talk about them installing one citizen who was a judge, in my view, the way an overseeing or an oversight committee should work is it should be all regular Joes. Like I said, construction worker, maybe even not any professionals who belong to any sort of governing body. If you belong to a governing body, you're disqualified right on the spot. And that maybe they would have 2, possibly 3 judges involved, who were judges previously, as a guide or as an advice to the body. Well, this is the way the system works. And if you had 3 judges, maybe, but probably not likely they'd all agree with each other. But maybe you could have two saying one and one saying the other, advising the body. Maybe they don't even have power to vote. They're just there as advisories, where they could instruct the oversight committee on what they think is happening in that situation and what the remedy should be. And then it's up to those people to decide. And to you, Payman, when you talk about, appointing judges, the same thing, I don't think, it just scares the shit out of me, literally, that you're going to take a lawyer and make him a judge. That shouldn't be. In the United States, you see judges who've never been a judge, never involved in the legal system whatsoever, and they're appointed and they're a judge. So they have a certain air of common sense that a judge doesn't and that a lawyer doesn't. I mean, I've met so many judges and lawyers have been before them. It's very hard to find common sense. Like just, common sense that you and me would have a conversation at breakfast, or be at a concert or a public event and just start shooting the shit with somebody and have a conversation about what's going on in the world. That level of common sense. I believe that lawyers, judges, police, school trustee boards, municipal, officials, none of them have common sense. They just kind of have this opinion that's totally connected to where they want to go. And I think that it's got to be the regular people of the country who make these decisions, and not people who are involved in the system. They're only going to benefit themselves.
I see where you're going with that, and I agree. Trevor, did you want to? Looks like you want to say something.
Oh, no, I was kind of hoping that you would kind of pop in there, but I agree with Michael there completely. Children can see when injustices occur. People know when injustices occur. They're trying to pass Bill C-40 through Parliament right now, which is the Miscarriage of Justice Act, and the lawyers all want lawyers to be on the board to check that, but that doesn't check lawyer misconduct, and the prosecutors are adamant that they are right, and no one can check should be able to check what their work. So there's just a lack of accountability throughout that entire system, and the proper check on that power is the public, and the jury system is being known as a bulwark against judicial abuse of power for centuries. It was being used for years for that specific purpose, to kind of bring justice back to the people. And perhaps we don't want it. It's not economical or something to have it in every trial, but if you were to have it at the top, then there would be a check if there was a miscarriage of justice by legal system insiders, legal system participants. There's no check on that power right now. So we have elites, lawyers, and judges basically dictating to the public exactly what's going to happen to them, and they control the entire process. They can manipulate the evidence. They can alter the evidence to create any result that they want, which is obviously not serving the public interest at all, but just protecting their own power.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the jury system as well, and I always use the example of when they were selecting the House Speaker in the U.S., McCarthy. They just brought this random woman in to basically be the judge as they were casting their votes. Now I know casting votes isn't as hard as what a judge does, but to Michael's point, like I don't think you should have to go to law school to be a judge, and a judge's job shouldn't be that complicated. He should basically be a referee. I don't know. You guys can jump in, but I don't know if Kirk is still here.
Well, interesting that we're on the topic. Sorry. Interesting that we're on the topics of juries right now, because I'll tell you my story. So I don't necessarily have faith in a jury being picked by the courts anymore. And, a jury is supposed to be of your peers, which means people from where you live, because, someone living in Toronto and someone living in rural Saskatchewan, if you get a jury from Toronto, you're going to have a really different outcome than if you have a jury from farmers where you live, people who know you and have the same moral compass as you do. So in my situation, I live in a very rural area of Southeast Saskatchewan. There's farmers and there's oil workers, and that's it. Nothing else. You're either work on a farm or you work in oil and gas. There's no other choice. I mean, other than nurses and local people sort of thing. So in my situation, all my crime happened in that area. So that's where your charges are supposed to happen. You're supposed to be, your court dates and all your court situation is all supposed to happen at the nearest judicial center to where your charge is. So mine is Estevan, Saskatchewan, which is about 100 kilometers west of where I live. But no, somehow, while I was in jail, they brought the charge to Regina, which is a big city, 3.5 hours north of me. Very different population, very different attitude. So when they picked my jury of my peers, that was the first illegal thing that happened with the jury situation. Second is, and this may be popular in Canada now, it may be a Saskatchewan thing, I don't know. They picked my jury by their healthcare numbers. Used to be they picked by your address. So they go through a map of all the streets and that in the city or wherever your jury's being picked of, and they would pick random house numbers. Now they'd use your health card number in Saskatchewan. So in Regina, the vaccination rate is like 94, 96%. It's not that where I live. And even if it was, the people have a different attitude where I live. Where I live, people believe in, you do what you have to do in your own life. I really don't care. I'm not going to judge you or jump into your life. I mean, there's small town, that sort of thing. But in general, most people, I think where I live, believe in your right to choose. They believe in freedom. They believe in not getting involved in someone else's garbage. And that's a good thing. When you move to a city like Regina, well, if you don't shovel your driveway like your neighbor did, they're going to report you to the police. If you got too much garbage in your backyard, they're going to call the police or the bylaw. If you're building a shed and it looks like it's more than 10 by 10 and it's too close to your fence, I'm going to call bylaw on you. Totally different people, totally different environment. And that's where they picked my jury from. And on top of that, my third point about the dangers of juries in Canada right now is the judge's instruction to juries. So when it comes to a trial, I believe, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people out here going to argue it, there should be no real jury instruction. It should be very simple and very uncomplicated. The jury is there because a judge does not have a say in your guilty or innocent verdict. They have no say. That's why you picked a jury. So when a judge now in Canada can give instructions to a jury that are an hour and a half long on how they need to find you guilty or not guilty, that incredibly complicates the situation. It puts some confusion, like the spirit of Jezebel that runs our country. It puts confusion into the court and into the jury, and it just complicates it to all hell. So now you have these people who are just regular Joes supposed to make a decision on your life in some cases, and the judge is telling them how to come to that decision. Where it should be, okay, I was present, I saw all the evidence, I listened to the arguments, I'll make up my own mind because I'm a juror. That's my right. That's why I'm picked. Because they picked me because I'm some random person and this is my thoughts and views. But no, the judges is in Coots and everywhere. The judges are instructing the juries to the point where they're tailor making the judgments. And again, criminal. The judges who do this, like my judge, Heather McMillan Brown, should be literally arrested, charged, removed from the bench, and then an oversight committee or whatever, or a group can determine whether she was right or wrong. But the fact that she's still continuing and still going, and this is her agenda, it's disturbing. It's disturbing that the judge in the Coots, I'm not totally familiar on the situation, but it's disturbing that that guy's still in power, still making these decisions. And there's, like Trevor says, no checks and balances whatsoever. And this has to stop, because they are no longer deciphering, I guess you could say, the law or explaining it. They're making it. They're taking the job of the executive branch over, and they're putting their own personal opinions, or whoever is directing them. They're changing the laws in Canada. They're changing the way the courts work, and it's extreme.
Michael, I'm going to give Trevor a chance to comment. After that, I kind of want to wrap up the panel with a question. So if you guys can be prepared to propose solutions for how we can reform the justice system. And Sue Kellen Dyer, if you asked a question, I don't see it yet. Go ahead, Trevor.
Yeah, no, very interesting comments, Michael. And I think that was the comment that people had about the Coutts trial, was the jury came back with a verdict, and then the judge also passed sentence, and there's a disconnect between what the jury decided and what they what the sentence was. And so there's sort of a disconnect between the communication with the public. But I think, I want to go back to that democratic reform idea, is that there's basically two camps in Canada. We got the camp that says that elites should make decisions for us, and they are smarter than us, and they are better than us. And we want these lawyer judges type people to make our decisions, and we should have no real say in the matter. And then there's more of a democratic idea of, well, we want to have regular people, not entrenched power, making our final decisions, and having it coming back to sort of a more person, or a more working class or a middle class kind of perspective of, this is what the regular Canadian wants, not an elite group is saying. And the elite group will tend towards dictatorships, and moving to a democratic reform will move to more decentralization. But the important thing is that a jury system, or just people involved in our democratic system, create power because we're talking about it, and they have a power to act, and they have some involvement. And that's what we are desperately seeking in Canada right now, is how do we as common people have power to affect change and have a voice.
Thanks, Trevor. So in case anybody's wondering what's going on with my internet connection, the power went out of my house. That's why I'm standing next to this window to get good cell reception. Sue, I'm sorry I can't see your question, so I can't ask it. So Kirk, I want you to get ready for the question that I'm going to ask. We'll go Kirk, Mike, and then Trevor. If you guys were, if you and 337 of your buddies got together and you took over supermajority in the parliament, what would you change to fix the justice system? If you and, I don't know, 7 of your buddies were Chief Justice, Justice of the Supreme Court, what would you change? If you were God and you could educate the people, like what single change would you think is necessary right now to fix our justice system? Go ahead, Kirk.
For sure, it would be implement whistleblower protection for Canada, Bill C-290. So that's implement whistleblower protection for Canada, Bill C-290. It's in the Senate now, but not one politician will talk about it. And I think if we started having, say, people that are committing crimes in Parliament arrested, I'm pretty sure it would clean up their acts pretty fast. Same with the RCMP, same with lawyers, and especially MSM. If they didn't do their jobs, they should be investigated. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Kirk.
Nope.
Thank you. Michael, go ahead.
Well, since you mentioned God, and that's what I'm all about, I'll answer in that respect. Number one, love your God with all your heart, mind, and body. And number 2, treat others as you wish to be treated. So love everyone. If you have that as your mission statement, you can't go wrong.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, Michael. And Trevor, you're the last one. Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great comment, Michael. And, I think along with that is that if we want less government, we also have to act better ourselves and be accountable personally. That's an important step, is that if we can be responsible and be good examples in our society, then we don't need oversight, and we can get rid of some of these oversight people. But if we are causing problems in society, then there's an easy excuse to go, well, because you guys are misbehaving, therefore we need to have more government. And I sort of see that as perhaps a problem that we're seeing with the amount of immigration that we got going on in Canada, is that it gives a government an excuse to crack down. If we have lots of dissidents and lots of crime and lots of problems, then it gives authoritarian people the excuse to go, oh, look, see, we need to have more law and order. We need to have stricter. But I'm trying to get to the idea that we want to have democratic reform. We want to put people on top of the legal system and on the political system, reinforce democracy, create more accountability structures. And I think that is done by having not an appointed set of advisors, but a jury system of representatives of Canada taken from all over in the different areas. And even if that just creates more conversation, that in itself is a good thing, to have more conversation about these issues, to break down those power structures and create accountability structures. And that's my hope. And I think those are, I've kind of come to the realization that that's a long-term ideal. And it might take a decade to accomplish all of those reforms. But if we don't, we're kind of heading towards a direction where the government is all powerful and the people are governed and have no, we have a ruling class and you have the rest of the people. And I don't think that's a path that we should go down in the modern world.
All right. Thank you, Trevor. I kind of wanted to thank you three gentlemen for coming on. You have experience in the court system and you're giving us insight. The rest of us, for better or for worse, we've never actually been in a courtroom. So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Payman.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye, everyone.
Nice chatting to you, Michael, as well.
Take care.
Kirk, nice to hear
Yes.
from you.
Kirk, I don't know.
Nice to meet you, Trevor. Yep.
Let's wait for
Thanks
Kirk
again,
to
guys.
say his goodbye.
Okay. Okay, take care, everyone.
Bye, guys.